Hello, it is I, Dr. Brian Lorgon 111, and welcome back to Blueprints, episode 111. It's been over 2 months since I recorded an episode of this game. Since then, I've been streaming a lot of speedruns. I'll link a playlist with some recorded speedruns if you're interested, but at the time of this recording, I currently have the world record in a couple different categories, blue tents and cursed blue tents. It's been a lot of fun. Anyway, when doing speedrunning, I was reading a lot of the Blueprint subreddit, because there was a lot of info about deep game mechanics that you need to know in order to get good runs. But while I was there, I also was reading tons of conspiracy theories, I guess you could call them, that people had about hidden stuff in the game. And I used to be one of those folks. But now, having had the mirror held up, I now think that there aren't any unsolved puzzles left in the game, currently at least. There's still supposedly going to be a final update to the game that's coming eventually, and so that could change things. But yes, having seen all the other crazy ideas that people have had, I kind of lost interest in my own crazy ideas because they're all crazy. And I also lost any drive to try to do any lore videos for this game. They're a lot of work to produce. And also, someone already beat me to the punch and made a couple of good ones. I'll link them in the description. That said, there is a bit of information that I've consolidated that I haven't seen elsewhere, and I want to share it because I think it's interesting. Namely, the origins, or my own speculation of the origins, of the character names. A lot of them seem to take inspiration from the history of computing. So let's review possible origins of these names. Simon P. Jones, our protagonist. Philip White, publisher. Anne Babbage, house manager. Sinclair and Epson, the family names from our coat of arms. Hartley Ruota, the Baron's valet. Randolph Moore, chief lab tech. And Kimberly Thompson, a junior lab tech. I think Philip White probably got his name from another Phil W., in particular, Philip Wadler. Wadler is a computer scientist who is very well known in functional programming circles and is one of the principal designers behind the purely functional language Haskell, which I happen to know a thing or two about. Fun fact, Wadler was on my PhD committee. Relatedly, the protagonist, Simon P. Jones, is probably named after Simon Peyton Jones, who, among other things, is the person who wrote and implemented the GHC Haskell compiler. House manager Anne Babbage is probably a reference to Charles Babbage, who's often called the father of the computer, for having implemented the first mechanical difference engine for doing computations using machinery. The family names Sinclair and Epson probably refer to the Timex Sinclair and an Epson home computer that were popular in the early 1980s. When I was young and first connecting to computers over telephone lines with a 2400 baud modem, I think I connected to a bulletin board system that was running on a Timex Sinclair, and I remember people talking about the CP/M operating system that the Epson QX10 apparently ran. Kimberly Thompson, the lab tech, is probably a reference to another K. Thompson, in particular Ken Thompson, who was the original implementation of Unix operating system, as well as the B language, which preceded the C language that's still very popular. Hartley Ruota, the dice-playing valet of the Baron, probably refers to Ralph Hartley, who's perhaps best known for the Shannon-Hartley theorem, which is information theory. Basically talks about signal-to-noise ratio, and if dice are an implementation of randomness, noise is kind of like the mathematical essence of randomness in terms of information theory. And I imagine that lab tech Randolph Moore is perhaps a reference to Gordon Moore, who is best known for Moore's Law, which talks about the doubling of the number of transistors on integrated circuits, and more generally in popular use, just talks about how computers continue to get faster and faster over time. And so I don't know for sure if those names were chosen with those people in mind, but the fact that there are so many names from the household of the game that have a striking similarity to so many names that are famous in the history of computer science. Definitely makes me think that most of those are probably indeed the inspiration. And finally, it's my understanding that in the UK, Marigold is a brand of rubber gloves, and so you might just refer to marigolds as the thing that you'd use washing the dishes to keep your hands from getting dirty or something like that. And the fact that Marion used the pen name Marigold as a way to distance herself from her family name so that she could write these political books basically was a way to keep her family name from getting dirty. And so I think the whole rubber gloves thing or whatever might be a little reference in her name as well, but that one's a bit more speculative on my part. So that's fun stuff. I've seen people mention one or two names and their possible origins, but I haven't seen all of them all summed up together. And so now I've done it here. It's episode 111 of this series, and I think that would make a fitting end for Lorgon 111 to finish this playlist on. If they do update the game with more content, I'll probably come back. But in the meantime, I'm just going to say that I hope that you all have thoroughly enjoyed this very long series. But now is a fine time to go ahead and call it. And yeah, I'll point out now that I have the YouTube Super Thanks button enabled. So if you'd like to leave me a little tip, it's appreciated. I hope you all have enjoyed the series thus far. I talked about reading the Blueprints subreddit, and I have seen various people talk about the various alphabet letters that are strewn about the estate. And I've seen a bunch of the letters called out, but I tried to compile a whole list on my own. Again, I think it's meaningless, not part of any larger puzzle, but for a while I had conspiracy theories or whatever, so just for posterity, here's the whole list that I compiled just on the screen. I read a bunch of threads, and most of them talked about most of these letters. The one that I was surprised that I never saw anyone call out was the H in the workshop. That's kind of the front of the unique chair in that room. But all the other letters that I think I have on my list, I've also seen other people call out in various Reddit threads and other places. I'll say at this point, if you have any questions about the game, feel free to ask them in the comments. As a result of doing speedrunning, I now know the game mechanics and a lot of fine details, like, really deeply. So you're welcome to ask questions, and I might be able to answer some of them. If you have your own conspiracy or lore theories, you're also welcome to post them, but I think at this point, I'm not really interested in that stuff very much anymore. Steam tells me I have over 400 hours in this game, by the way. So despite being the most expensive game I've bought on Steam, I'd say that it was well worth it. Once again, I hope you've enjoyed the ride. But for now, that's the end of Blueprints. I don't know what's next for the channel. At the time that I'm recording this, in mid-September, I've not recorded any other games. So depending upon how industrious I am in the near future, there may be another series immediately to follow, or there may be a break between the series. We'll see. But yeah, definitely check the video description on this one for some interesting links. But that's all I have to say today. With that, I am Dr. Brian Lorgon 111, and I hope, as always, that you all are having a great day. Bye-bye.